Those who show up ready to learn and are taking accountability for their success are successful much faster.
How is it going, ladies and gentlemen? This is Sean Barnes. I want to welcome you back to the Way of the Wolf and the Job Chicks podcast. This is going to be a very special collaborative episode with myself, Sean Barnes, and Melissa Bassano and Brittany Fowler. So, ladies, I am so excited for us to do this collaborative episode today. Melissa.
Sure. I'm Melissa Bassano. I have been a life coach, lifestyle coach, executive coach for about 25 years, and we have worked with hundreds of executives, getting them to that next tier, the pinnacle of their career. And I'm excited to be here today. I know we've been talking about this for a long time, and I'm so excited to be here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brittany Fowler, and Melissa and I actually work together. We are both executive career advisors at Browning Associates, and I am incredibly passionate about meeting my clients where they're at in order to help them achieve their ultimate career goals.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a very exciting episode. We're going to be talking about the state of the job market and how on earth we're supposed to find a job these days. It has been absolutely hectic over the past few years. If you have not listened to their show, please go check it out. And where would you ladies like to start on this topic?
Well, I know that it's a very difficult job market right now, and a lot of people are struggling. It's not as easy as just submitting your resume anymore. You really have to stand out. There's many factors. It's your branding, it's your LinkedIn branding, but most importantly, it's who you're networking with. You know, everybody that you talk to, there's a very specific way you want to network with them in order to build rapport, because if you're not a good rapport builder, you're not going to get the results that you need. And what Brittany and I specialize in is teaching you how to network effectively with the right people, which is just about anybody. Every connection has opportunity. So we teach you the correct way to network so you can leverage your network with your resume and your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to highlight one thing there, Melissa, is network effectively. So important, because when we get a new client and they say, I've been networking for a year and nothing has really panned out, and of course, there's a plane flying overhead right now. Of course. One moment, ladies and gentlemen. It was either going to be that or a leaf blower. Highlighting the importance of networking effectively. We get clients who say, I've been networking for a year and nothing has transpired from that. And then we really unpack what their strategy has been. Their strategy is incorrect because a lot of the times they hop on the phone with a friend or a former colleague and they say, I'm looking for a job. Do you know of anything for me? And it just falls flat. And now you exhausted all of your contacts and they all led to dead ends. So I feel like that is the most common mistake that people are making. So working with an executive advisor who understands proper network facilitation is priceless.
You know, I was listening to one of y'all's episodes, and there was a few things that stood out, and one in particular was how important effective communication skills are in the world today, and this is in the physical world and in the virtual world. And it doesn't matter if you're a 10 out of 10 on intellect. If you cannot effectively communicate, if you're a 3 when it comes to communication, people are going to perceive you as that level 3. And so being intentional about networking, yes, extremely important, but also being intentional about developing these communication skills. And so can you share a little bit about how do you get people to open up and start getting more comfortable with the communication? Do you guys do like mock interviews, or like what does that look like for y'all?
Brittany, I'll let you take that.
Woo, big topic. So words are only as powerful as the passion that you speak them with. So when you're working with a really high level coach like Melissa and I, we can help you construct the perfect words. But I believe that all communication really needs the foundation of confidence and passion. So words are not powerful when you're speaking your value if you can't actually tap into the heart of your listener to understand that I love what I do. I'm good at what I do, but I love what I do, because that really hooks in your audience and they don't want to let you go.
I also think it speaks to yourself as a leader as well. You know, they're looking at you coming into this company. You may not be in the C-suite yet. You may still be in that executive level, and they're looking at you and your communication skills. If you communicate effectively, they're going to consider you as the next leader in that company. So having great communication skills is really what's going to take you to that next level.
So I think that what I'm hearing is how important it is to, yes, be able to effectively convey your message, your passion. And one of the things that I hear from people is, man, I can really tell you're passionate about this. And I do. I get very lively and engaging whenever I start talking about leadership in particular. But also, it's extremely important to understand your target audience. If you walk into a boardroom full of executives, you are going to want to communicate with them in a certain way. If you work at that same company and walk out to a wireline shop in the Permian, you are not going to want to communicate with them in the same way, because you will be perceived very differently. So communication and understanding who your target audience is a crucial skill to develop, and we have to just get the reps in. You have to go spend time with these people, understand what motivates and inspires them and how to communicate with them. And then same thing with these executives. It's challenging to build those skills and frustrating at times, but they are a vital piece of effective communication.
The other thing too, I think, what's challenging for executives in job search today is you go in for an interview with that very first gatekeeper. It could be a recruiter, it could be the hiring manager, it could be the CEO of a company. That actually does happen, where CEOs will reach out to people on LinkedIn and say, hey, saw your profile, looks like you'd be a perfect fit. So we really don't know who that first gatekeeper will be. But it's safe to say you might not know much about them. And this is why I always tell my clients, when you go into an interview and you have to make that first impression, and the objective of the interview is to link to what they're looking for, you might as well start with asking them questions about themselves, about their role, about the company, because whether or not you have a job description with bullet points, asking somebody what their perception is of the greatest challenges that are occurring inside that organization will give you so much more to work with in connecting to what it is they're looking for from you.
You know, what's really powerful on that front, Brittany, is if you take the time to prepare and research not only the individual, but the company itself. And yes, come in and ask questions, but if you're able to ask educated and targeted questions that are relevant to their business, it sends a message of, oh, wow, Sean has actually done some research. He knows what's going on. And it doesn't take much. If you're going to interview with the CEO and you spend 30 minutes to an hour researching and coming up with a list of very targeted and specific questions, that is going to blow them away, because most people that I've interviewed over the years, it's frustrating beyond belief when we finish the interview and ask, well, do you have any questions for us? No, I'm good. It's like, that sends a message in and of itself.
And also ask multiple stakeholders too. So if you go into the first round interview and you ask them what's your biggest challenges in the organization, just because you asked that first person, when you make it to round two, ask again, because every single person in the company is going to have a different perspective and something new to share with you. So it's worth continuing to ask those questions.
If I could just kind of wind that back just a little bit and shift gears from talking to a CEO or someone who's an executive, I want to talk about meeting people where they're at, like you were talking about. And even when you're networking with people, it doesn't matter who you're networking with. It could be your next door neighbor. It could be the CEO of a company, and you're meeting people where they're at. And every connection that you talk to might have an opportunity. So when people are networking, they think they're calling their friends and asking them for a job, right? Oh, I'm out of work, I'm not working. But you need to have a clear message that is, I'm not asking you for a job. But if there's someone you think I should be having conversations with, I'm doing my research and I want to figure out where I'm going to be a good fit. So for me, I feel like it is everybody that you talk to, and every single person has an opportunity, and that might not be a job, but it might be somebody else for you to speak to. But you have to have that clear message to make them feel comfortable that you're not calling them to ask for a job, because that's what most people think. That's the first thing when you say networking. They say, I don't want to call my friends and ask for a job. And I say, good, because I'm going to tell you not to call your friends and ask for a job. So you really have to make sure that you're very effective in your messaging and how you're approaching it to make sure those are fruitful conversations. And meeting people where they're at is one of the key points.
And I think another thing that I'll add there is not portraying any desperation at all, which can be challenging. If you're 6 months into a job search and you have no income, you can get to that point of desperation where, like, hey, I really need a job. What can I do? I'll do anything. It's not going to be received well. But if I pick up the phone, hey, Brittany, how are things going? I saw that you've been traveling to some races recently. What's going on your end? Brittany is inevitably going to say, well, what about you, Sean? What are you up to? Oh, well, still trying to work through some stuff, and I've got some things that I'm working on. So keep it very lighthearted, and don't open the call with, hey, I really need a job, right? You just start off in a very conversational type tone and demeanor, and that prevents them being put back on their heels thinking that all you wanted to do was call them and ask for something.
Absolutely. And I want to ask you then, you were in a corporate environment and you were able to make that transition from corporate into your business. And we have a lot of clients who have a hard time making that transition. So tell us how you made that transition. And it's never easy, but tell us what your success is and how you did it.
So this is something, so right out of college, I admittedly had 2 failed attempts at starting companies. One was a computer repair shop. The other was an automotive speed shop, just because I love racing. I thought coming out of college, I can start a business, and I was so wrong. So I ended up having to pay bills and pay back student loans and all the things, got a job, and then found myself working in oil and gas. And I have about 16 years of experience in oil and gas, which that industry is highly acquisitive and full of entrepreneurs. So it gave me an opportunity to kind of fulfill that entrepreneurial spirit with not as much risk. I got to work with all of these entrepreneurs over the years and learn how to grow and scale businesses. Now, most of the acquisitions were anywhere from 50 to 300 employees, and we would roll them up into the organizations that I worked for, which were 2,000 and 3,000 employees in total by the time I departed. But I always had this fire inside of me of one day I'm going to start a company. And I got to a point in my late 30s, early 40s, and I thought, okay, I've really got to go ahead and make this leap, because the last thing I want is to be in my 60s and retire and have regret that I didn't give it one more try. So I started saving my money. Now, admittedly, growing up without any money, I went through a stage where, as my income was increasing, I wasted and blew a lot of money once I started earning it. And then I realized that wasn't fulfilling at all. So I actually found myself, while the majority of my life had been in IT, about 8 years ago, I stepped in and started leading human resources, and I developed this passion around building people and teams. And so I thought, there's something here. I am extremely passionate about lifting others up and improving and building businesses. This is what I want to do. So I started saving. And I didn't know what it was going to look like, but everybody always says it is stressful beyond belief whenever you go out and start a business. And because I am so risk averse, which sounds odd coming from an entrepreneur, but because I'm so risk averse, I just saved money, saved money, saved money. And I also started this podcast 3.5 years ago. Now, initially the intent of starting the podcast was not to build a brand or anything like that. It was just to kind of share the lessons that I had learned. But what I did learn along the way is I was building a brand. I was building a reputation for delivering results and showing up every single week. And that's one of the big things that I have learned is when you are an entrepreneur, it is going to be stressful beyond belief. And it does not matter how prepared you think you are not prepared enough. I spent years saving money. I spent years promoting and building the show. I spent years expanding my network on all the social media platforms. And I had this mindset of, oh, I've got this massive network. I've been networking with all these CIOs and CHROs over the years, and I'm just going to step off and everybody's going to want to work with Sean. Well, that hasn't exactly been the case. If I had to look at the numbers, I would say 20 to 30% were cheering me on, follow your dream, go get it done. And probably 1% of my network are actually doing business with me today. The rest of our customers have come from me having to learn how to sell and build a pipeline and generate and nurture leads. These are skills that I highly recommend people start developing before they jump off and start that business. Now, I'm also keenly aware that a lot of executives, they get exited from their company and they had not spent all of that time developing communication skills, understanding lead generation, understanding building a brand. Building your brand is the most important thing that I can recommend for anybody trying to start a business, because we're living in this increasingly virtual world and everything you do is accessible. Pretty much. So big lesson, build your brand, learn how to sell. And this goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about it doesn't matter if you're a 10 of 10 engineering skill set, if you can't communicate, if nobody knows who you are, if you don't have a brand that people can see and resonate with, and that you are passionate about doing what you do, people are going to be able to see it. I don't know if that answered your question. I went a little bit long on it, but I do get passionate about that topic.
Hey, I understand that, I am also risk adverse. And when my husband was starting his business, it was very scary. He just abruptly left corporate and decided that, we're going to start a business. And he's a little bit more excited about taking risks. And luckily it worked out very well for him because he's very smart. But you've got to take that leap. You've got to believe in your abilities, and you've got to have that confidence to know you're going to, it's kind of like a salesperson. You eat what you kill, and you've got to make sure that you're ready to take that leap in order to just take that risk.
Yeah, it's a huge risk. And like I said, I spent years preparing for it mentally. Now, obviously, I wasn't broadcasting it, and I didn't say, oh, on this date, I'm going to go start my business. But I knew that when the time was right, I would know the time was right for me to exit. And the company that I worked for, it was just such an incredible opportunity. I was actually the third employee whenever they started over a decade ago, and we got up to 2,800 employees and everywhere in between over the years through the pandemic and the booms and busts in oil and gas. And then my transition out, it was very amicable. They were supportive. They wanted me to stay, but it was just kind of my time. And they threw me this big going away party and gave me this award. It was a wonderful, wonderful separation, and they've been extremely supportive. And I think that's the best way to go. I gave it my all to the very last day. And to this day, they'll call me up and yeah, well, this is what's going on. Well, that's there. This is what happened here. Because like you obviously you don't want to burn any bridges. That's just not who I am. And while I'm not doing any work with them now, I might at some point in the future, but I don't want to right now because I want to do this on my own. And one of the things that I have learned in my life is how important it is to lean in to adversity. It's very easy for us to operate in this world of instant gratification and negativity and get sucked into the vortex of negativity. You have to stay positive. You have to stay focused on your mission, and you have to understand you're going to have to eat glass for a while. It is not going to be fun. And that's the beautiful part about it, because it is forging you into a greater version of yourself. Stressful beyond belief, but an incredible opportunity to grow and step up into the person you were meant to be.
We work with a lot of executives, and I know Brittany will want to talk on this as well. You mentioned about staying in the positive, and what happens to a lot of executives, whether they get kind of cut from their job, it was downsizing, they get let go, they're stuck in that negativity. Whether something happened, they get stuck in that negativity. And even though they may not be saying something negative in an interview or in a networking call, people can tell by your energy that there is something more there. There's some kind of negative energy. So what Brittany and I really do, we actually work on this quite well, is helping them overcome whatever the issue is while they're networking. Because if you can't heal from that, your networking is going to reflect that. And I know Brittany will definitely want to talk on that.
I just got off the phone with a client this morning, right before this podcast, and she is dragged into a lawsuit with the startup that she just exited, and it's not good. So we're starting to really strategize how it is she's going to start reaching out to her personal network. And she has this dark cloud looming over her that everybody's viewing her for what just happened in her company. Now, the thing is that she really did nothing wrong, and she had no involvement whatsoever, other than working for that organization as the COO. But she thinks that everyone is viewing her in the light of what just happened to her. So you are so right, Melissa. It's so incredibly important to reflect on the way that we are emotionally and mentally thinking about our past. Because if we don't work through that, then it is going to carry over into the way that you converse with people. So earlier, I had mentioned that the foundation of any communication needs to be confidence. And when you don't have that, you either have discomfort or you have desperation leak through. It's very difficult to get people on board with being part of your career success journey when they're tied to that type of energy. So it's super important for people who are going through something like this to work with a coach, work with a spouse, work with a best friend, work with someone so you can identify why you're having that blockage.
So this is such a huge, such an incredibly important topic, in that we have to surround ourselves with people that are going to lift us up, whether it's working with someone like you guys, working with me, or your significant other, friends, family. And this becomes especially difficult if the people that are the closest to you, your friends and family, also lean into that negativity, because then you have to be even stronger. But you have to be self-aware enough to recognize what's going on. And let's just say it's a family member that's so negative. I'm not saying you have to cut them out of your life completely, but create a little bit of distance and make room for other friends and mentors and guides and coaches that can lift you up, and spend as much time around them as you possibly can, because they are going to lift you up. Whenever we interact with people, there's an exchange of energy that occurs. And so find those those people that when you have a conversation, it lights up your world, and latch onto them, because that energy is going to become infectious. And then whenever we drop off this call, the next person I go to, I'm going to be all kinds of excited and fired up, because that's what we do. We lift each other up. And if you find yourself circling the drain, ask yourself, do an audit of the people that are in your closest proximity and adjust accordingly.
And I think we have to keep our own energy in check, because if we're working with clients who have that negative energy, I might have one day full of people who have had some trauma at work, and they got let go, or, it was some weird circumstance. We have to keep our own energy in check so we can be that support for them as well. And it's not, you don't want to kind of lie to yourself and say, oh yes, everything is great, but it's really more getting to that core and healing it so you can be a more positive, excited, passionate person going into a job interview or even a networking conversation.
One more thing I'd love to add on to that. I have a friend of mine that does, we'll say, life and fitness coaching, and he started a men's community because he has a spot in his heart where he wants to be able to lift men up, just because there's a lot of pressures and stress that they're encountering. And one of the things he expressed to me was he got to a point within his actual men's community that he tried to start up where he was getting frustrated because there was so much negativity, and he started to recognize that it was dragging him down. I said, well, yeah, think about it this way. If you've got one or two guys in your community that are pulling you down, it doesn't matter how great, strong, and motivated you are, they're going to keep pulling you down. And if more and more come in, they're going to keep pulling you farther and farther down. And if you don't have somebody that's also going to pull you up, eventually you're going to get sucked down to their level. It doesn't matter how charismatic and full of energy you are. You have to maintain that level of self-awareness to surround yourself. And so he kind of started letting some of them go and then spending more time with others that are vibrating at a higher level and focused on leveling up, putting their dent in the universe, and gotten to a much better place. But it's easy for us to fall into that trap, especially for all of us on the call that are so focused on lifting people up. You can only save them if they want to be saved.
Yeah, I feel like as an executive advisor, one of the things that I like to brand myself with consistency, and I hope that every executive that I've ever worked with will say this to be true, is that I always tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Because sometimes they need to hear, you are the problem. That can be difficult, but it can be life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And Brittany and I are very similar in the way we coach executives. And I think that's why we banter so well and that's why we ended up with this podcast, because we both coach very similarly. And you have to really, again, it comes back to meeting people where they're at, but helping them understand in a way that is, easy for them to take that. I don't want to call it criticism, but you have to open your eyes and you really have to hear things you don't want to hear in order to make those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so this is such a powerful topic, but I also want to get into the topic of, let's get into resume and your LinkedIn presence. These are two separate things. However, there is overlap between the two, and I'm keen to hear y'all's thoughts on how important one or the other is. And Brittany getting excited. I can already see it.
So I need to start with addressing the elephant in the room. Our audience on the Job Chicks needs to hear this right now, because we are seeing a major uptick in the way that AI is being utilized in the job hunting, right? So we're talking about confidence. The episode that we're doing right now, the foundation is all about confidence. And this has everything to do with the executive, their confidence, and then the LinkedIn and the resume, because the uptick in AI is giving executives the opportunity or the challenge to say, oh, hey, we saw your resume on this search. You're a great match for this role, but there's something wrong with your resume. Now, when you work with Browning Associates, we create a branding package for you that is so unique to you and what you're positioning, and you're going to let an AI tool tell you there's something wrong with your branding documents? No, it is an opportunity for each executive to say, sorry, this is who I am. Get to know me. Let's have a conversation. Look way beyond that resume. Yes, the LinkedIn branding is important. You want that to absolutely be polished and reflect you, but getting stumped or tricked by these AI robots that are saying there's something wrong with you, you need to fix it, is going to cause executives to lose their confidence every single time. That's what I wanted to address before we even get into this.
And we also did an episode too, that your resume is not the magic pill. Your resume needs to look incredibly professional. It needs to tell a story. It needs to show your experience. You want it to stand out in a way that when you're interviewed, your resume just isn't the magic pill. It's who you are and how you communicate your skills and your story and your passion. So the resume is important, but it isn't the magic pill.
I've had a number of people over the past year that have reached out to me, and I'll go have coffee with them and sit down. And the story's always the same. I've been sending my resume off to hundreds of different places. I don't even get a call back. And the first thing I do is pull up their LinkedIn profile, and I'm just going to pick a name out of the blue. Oh, well, Joe, okay, well, here's part of the problem. Now, again, your resume is one component. Your LinkedIn presence is another component. Your ability to communicate and network effectively in the physical and virtual world is arguably the most important piece. So the first thing I always encourage them to do is we'll make tweaks to their resume, but then do a lot of heavy lifting on their LinkedIn presence. And then a lot of it is really coaching them on how to network effectively with people. And LinkedIn is such an incredibly misunderstood and powerful tool. And one individual, I was encouraging him, okay, well, you don't post anything, you don't comment anything. And his response was, well, they're all idiots on there. It's like, okay, maybe, but you need a job right now. You don't have a job. And maybe if they are idiots, what a beautiful opportunity for you to respond to a post and showcase your knowledge and command of knowledge in a given domain. The second you do that, somebody is going to say, well, okay, Joe well, that's interesting. Let me check out his profile. Let me see what this is all about. So you're going to start driving more inbound traffic as opposed to you just throwing stuff out there. So building that online presence. And then also, if you see a company that has a job posting, because I'm not confident in one single applicant tracking system's ability to source a good candidate. And that's a whole galactic can of worms, but I encourage people, if you see that Halliburton is hiring, don't just apply for the role and then walk off. Find other people that work there that are in safety or HR or IT. Start connecting with them and don't blind fire a connection request. Look at their profile, spend 2 or 3 minutes. Look at their profile. Hey, Jason, I see that we both went to school here. How have things been for you? Establish that connection, and then once there's a little bit of rapport and back and forth, oh, I just noticed you guys have a job posting. Do you know anything about that? Oh, actually, yeah. So it's a way to circumvent the AI that you were talking about, Brittany. It's a way to circumvent these applicant tracking systems and lean into the human component. And that's the most important part. And yes, technology is becoming more and more prominent, but we are humans first. And that is something that is, I think, getting lost, especially with some of the younger generations.
I am so happy that we are having this collaborative conversation today because it really validates to our clients and people who listen to our podcast that it's not just Brittany and I, or it's not just Browning Associates who has this method or this philosophy of how you should be job searching. It is widely known that networking is really going to get you to the place you need to be. It's not just submitting an application or a resume. In fact, if you only submit an application or a resume, I can guarantee it's not going to go anywhere.
I know that there's a lot of executives out there that are using AI to create their resume. There's a lot of executives out there that are writing their own resume, and that's fine. I can totally see those people falling for the AI tool outreaches that say, hey, I'm an executive recruiter. I saw your resume, but you need to pay me $95 so we can optimize it. I can see those people falling for that. But when you are paying top tier dollar for resume writers that are renowned in their field, and you allow a silly little message like that from someone you don't know to make you question, oh my goodness, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with my resume? And you can't stay the course and trust in your advisors, your writers, then you have a much larger issue that tells me that you're really struggling to take to what works. Because like Melissa said, this isn't a Brittany thing, this isn't a Melissa thing, this isn't a Browning Associates thing. There are many experts out there like us and Sean and Tegan Bartos on our last episode who all understand that this method is the way.
You know, you said something there, Brittany, that I deeply appreciate. It's stay the course. Don't bounce around and keep switching gears and going back and forth, because look, success and failure are actually on the same path. Failure is just an earlier exit. If you stay the course and stay focused on your mission, your purpose, and who you are and what you're trying to accomplish, you will find success. Now, that doesn't mean to be stubborn and not learn new skills along the way, but that is something that I see when people are bouncing around all over the place, and it's easy to fall into that trap. If you're stuck and don't know what to do, well, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this. And you don't make any meaningful progress on anything at all. Understand who you are, what you're focused on, what you're passionate about, and relentlessly pursue that. And you're going to have to learn skills along the way, but stay true to who you are, because even if you do land a job where you convince somebody that you have skills, or you convince somebody of something, they're going to find out and you will be exited at some point. So stay true to who you are, and you're going to yield far better results in the long term. All right. So okay, there's one more thing before we jump off of LinkedIn. Okay. Make sure you have a good profile picture. Don't have a blurry picture with you fishing and sunglasses on, please. Just get a decent photo cell phones these days take phenomenal pictures. Just get a good photo, have some sort of banner image. Obviously work with professionals like yourself to really polish it up, but the first thing you need is a professional photo of you smiling and not just a grumpy bear, all because you're looking like a badass. I don't know if I can say that on y'all's show, but you have to look professional and polite and have a warm and welcoming photo on your profile. So I had to get that out there. That is probably one of the most important pieces.
I am loving, I was just talking crap about AI, but I am loving these AI-infused headshots. Oh, the colors are vibrant. It just looks polished. And I am not affiliated with this company, but I know that there are many out there, and executives spend a lot of time and a lot of money doing their research. So I'm going to throw this nugget out there. There is a company called Insta Headshots, and apparently you upload about 10 selfies, you pay $35 or something, and they give you like 40 different options for headshots, and they come out so well that you just struggle with which one you're going to pick. Highly recommend it.
And if I could add one more thing to this, is I know a lot of people have very old photos of themselves on LinkedIn. And if you're trying not to date yourself because you might think you look older than the photo will still look dated. So I highly suggest you do something, what Brittany was just talking about, an Insta photo that's AI, So it is updated. You have to look like your presence on social media has to be updated, because if you are not, they're going to think that that's how you are internally too, that you're not with the times. You've got to advance, you've got to progress with your technology. So that's one big thing that drives me crazy is you might have a photo that's 20 years old and it doesn't look like you, but you look younger and you're happy with it.
Yeah, so that is another great point, and I'm quite certain it wasn't intentional, but my mind went to leading multiple generations and hiring for younger generations versus tenured generations, and sometimes people get self-conscious of it. I've worked with a number of people that are right out of college or in their 20s and like, well, nobody takes me seriously. Okay, well, that's a challenge. And then on the far other end of the spectrum, you have people that are like, well, I'm old, nobody wants to work with, an old crudgety person. Okay, well, don't be old and crudgety first, but view it through a lens of I am experienced, I am tenured. And yes, you might be old and crudgety, but you need to learn communication skills. You need to learn how to wear a smile. And for those of you that are out there and just out of college and struggling for people to take you seriously, you're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to put the time in. You're going to have to put the reps in. And an interesting thing starts to occur when you get into the room and you show the knowledge that you have, you show these skills that you bring to the table, that number, that age is going to start to fade away, and people are going to think, oh, wow, Jason actually, well, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't really thought of it that way. But if you go into it with this mindset of, well, nobody's taking me seriously, people are going to pick up on it. I mean, we've been talking about this throughout the show. You have to come into it, view things through the right lens of this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to step up and show them what I'm capable of. And if you surround yourself with the right people that are going to lift you up, you can walk into that room with your chest out and your head up high and say, well, look, I'm an expert, not an ego, but showcase what you are capable of doing, and you will start to win them over.
Respecting that age gap is important, because as someone who's younger, you can learn from the older generation, but the older generation can learn just as much as the younger generation coming in. And you have to respect that age gap, because I feel like the Gen Xers and, the boomers are starting to retire, but I feel like the Gen Xers are not really respecting that younger age group coming in, who are, some of them are incredible. You can learn a lot. And I think that respect should go both ways. And that's really how you're going to make a cohesive team.
Yes. Now, one thing that I do want to ask, I was listening to another episode of y'all's recently, and the topic of being an introvert and networking as an introvert came up. Now, it might surprise you to hear the majority of my life I have been a hardcore introverted IT nerd. That's who I was almost the entirety of my life. 8 years ago, whenever I had the opportunity to start leading human resources, I realized very quickly I could no longer achieve the things that I wanted to achieve with my office door closed and the light turned off, banging away on my keyboard. I had to learn effective communication. I had to learn how to walk into a room full of strangers that I had never met and have a conversation with them. I would love to hear y'all's perspective on what is the one or two best pieces of advice for those introverts that just lock up at the thought of going into a room full of people that they don't know.
Another great question that is just loaded with so many good, juicy details. But the first thing that comes to me intuitively on this topic is, and I could be wrong because I am a major extrovert, never been an introvert before, but I do find that introverted people, although there are many characteristics of an introvert, one of them is that their perception plays a heavy role through the lens of what are other people thinking of me. So I find that introverts find it very intimidating to pair with extroverts. As an extrovert, I want to tell all the introverts, we're not thinking about what you're thinking about us. We are very in the moment. When I'm talking to people, I'm so in the vibe of my own energy that I'm not dissecting their every little move at all. In fact, extroverts do a really good job at accepting people as they are, which is actually a perfect pairing for introverts. So if an introvert comes together with an extrovert, extroverts are so accepting and so in the pocket of who they are that they're actually welcoming you with open arms to just ease into who you are. So ride that wave of energy, introverts, versus thinking, oh my gosh, this extrovert is totally going to pick up on that. I'm nervous. We're not. We're not.
I like to call myself an extroverted introvert. So when I'm working all week, when I'm talking to clients, when we're on the podcast, I'm very much an extrovert because I'm confident in what we're doing. I'm confident in my job. But as an introvert, I love to stay home. I like to, my husband and I and my dog, and it's hard sometimes coming out of that shell. And I attribute it to almost being I don't want to say a performer. I have a performing arts background, so I'm able to turn it on and turn it off. But you have to think of it as you're an introvert, and that's great, but you do have to kind of turn it on a little bit when you are talking with people, and you want to find your sweet spot where you're passionate, because that will allow you to come out of your shell and get excited about what you're talking about. So you find things that make you excited, and that's going to turn you into more of an extrovert when you're networking.
Yes, I love that. I completely forgot about the whole leaning into things that you are passionate about. I've been making notes while both of you are talking. Now, some things that have helped me over the years. Yes, hardcore introvert, but I am also very mission focused and love a good challenge. So one thing that did help me out is going into it with the mindset of I'm going to walk away with 3 business cards. And it's going to stress me out beyond belief, but I'm going to walk away with 3 business cards. So then I have a goal. I have a target. And then it's actually kind of funny because there will be times I get my 3 business cards. Okay, I'm done. And I leave, walk away. But another thing that that has helped me whenever I am at networking events, because Brittany, you touched on something. I would be so focused. Well, what do they think about me? And immediately my mind would start racing. And a trick that has helped me out beyond belief is taking the focus off of me and putting it onto the person that I am talking to by asking them questions. Well, hey, Jason, what are you doing? Oh, well, tell me about that. Oh, well, tell me about your dog. Well, tell me about that. And what happens is you start asking them questions where you are genuinely interested in the answer. And then all of a sudden they walk away. Man, I really like that guy, Sean. He seemed to really care about me. And all I did was ask questions, and I was able to take the focus off of me and put it onto them. So that seems to have helped me out tremendously over the years, and it makes it easier again to take the focus off of me and
We're
put
going
it
to
on
have to
them.
do a whole other episode about the importance of goals, because you just said something so valuable, is that when you're struggling with something, you can turn it into a growth opportunity, facing a challenge to say, well, if I set a goal for myself, I'm going to have to overcome these challenges. And it actually gets you out of your comfort zone mentally, emotionally, and physically. So that's actually one of my favorite things to do with my clients, especially in the first 60 days of a campaign, is set a weekly goal, because then when we follow up the following week, we talk about it. Did you hit your goal? They either did, and we talk about what they learned, or they didn't, and we talk about why. Because there might be something we need to work through a little bit deeper to make sure that we're reaching those goals, or else we're never going to know how to set the next set of goals. So I just think it's a great tip for coaches out there too. If you're a coach listening to this and you're really unsure of how to create progress for a client, talk with them about what works for them and set goals together.
I have a feeling that the Job Chicks and the Way of the Wolf will have many collaborations, because this has been an incredible episode for both of us and all of our clients and all of our listeners. I am so excited to continue and have more conversation around the job search, around entrepreneurship, and all of the challenges that come along with it. I'm just so excited that we were able to do this.
I am too. And I have to ask, Melissa, what is one of the biggest things that you have learned in this industry, in this business over the years that you can share with everybody?
Don't take things personally. When you're working with a client and that client is going through something, inevitably they will take it out on you, and you cannot take it personally. You have to really separate yourself from that. It's their energy, it's what they're going through, and you can help them through it, but it's not on you. It is not something that is your problem. And as you know, as people who are very highly sensitive and we're intuitive and we tend to take on that energy. So that's the biggest separation that I had to learn, was to not take things personally.
What I find is that, Melissa, you're gonna love this. There is a big difference between a client who is ready to show up and do the work and learn and take accountability versus a client who's going to come to the table and say, I want you to do the work for me. I hired you to do this, and blame, blame, blame. And the big difference between that in regard to outcome is that those who show up ready to learn and are taking accountability for their success are successful much faster.
This has been probably one of my most favorite episodes I've recorded in as long as I can remember. I can't thank you both enough for coming together with this collaborative show, and really looking forward to us doing some more in the future.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that is all we have for the show today. Thank you so much, and y'all have a good one.